Hey everybody, this is the Reddest Beard Podcast. I'd like to welcome you to the very first episode. I'm your host, Sean Martin, and this is a podcast that is going to be centered around telling stories. The stories of individual people, either my own or my guests, and just sharing them for the purpose of sharing the human experience. I hope you enjoy. I hope that sometimes I'll make you laugh, sometimes I'll make you cry, that you'll be entertained at the end of the day. That's what this is about, and I'm glad that you're here with me. So, you might be wondering, what's the point of telling somebody's story? I used to wonder that same thing myself. I used to think that telling my own story wasn't important. Right? What could I possibly say? The reason that I decided that I should start telling my stories, start talking about my experiences, well, that was a result of a really dark time in my life. People that know me personally know that I don't shy away from talking about my history of substance abuse. I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I struggled with addiction actively for years. I took my first drink around the time I was about 13 years old, and through miraculous events out of my control, I took my last one in 2010. But the reason that I was able to stay sober for so long, the reason that I'm sober now, the reason that I'm clean and off those drugs and substances, is because of 12-step recovery programs. Now, those recovery programs don't like to be mentioned by people in public media such as radio or television or podcasts, so I'll keep those separate. But I can tell you that one of the things that I learned in that process was that for addicts, for alcoholics to be able to help each other, one of the most important things that we can do is share our experience, our strength, and our hope about our situations. That we have a common problem, and that there's a solution for it, and that only we can give it to each other. That set me off on a path where I was finally able to be liberated from the bondage of addiction. And up until today, I still haven't had to go back. That lesson that it taught me, though, was something deeper. Not just that a couple of guys that struggle with substance abuse can sit around a table and help each other, but specifically it's that common bond that is shared between people that are recovering, that understanding that somebody out there gets me, somebody out there understands what it's like to be trapped in my head. That's what saved my life. That's what makes this so powerful, and that's what makes it work. But then I had to realize at some point that everybody struggles with different things in their lives. It might not be a substance abuse addiction. It might not be an addiction as we would classify it in something like the DSM. But we all have our own struggles, and too often we wind up feeling like we're completely alone and nobody understands us. And I blame that mostly on our inability as a culture to really talk about what's going on inside of our own minds, to really reach out to somebody else next to us and say, I'm here, and I've been through something similar, and you're not alone. One of my favorite stories of all time is Plato's allegory of the cave. If you're not familiar with it, I'll tell you a little bit about it now. Imagine, Plato said, that there were a group of people that were born in a cave, born in darkness, and that from the very earliest moments of their lives, they were confined in a chair facing a wall. They were never given a chance to see the light of day. They were never given the opportunity to see the world around them. Instead, they had to stay facing this wall, and that's all they could see. Imagine, he said, that there was a fire that was lit behind them, and that shapes were passed in front of the fire to create shadows on the wall. And this is the only reality that they knew. So take, for example, a shape of a butterfly. This shape was passed before the fire, and the shadow was cast on the wall, and these people were told, this is a butterfly. And it's all they knew. It's the only thing that they knew about existence, about life around them. And so they had to take it as fact because they didn't know any better. But imagine then, one day they managed to break the bonds that hold them. They can turn around for the first time and see a fire. They can turn around and see other people. They can turn around and see objects that are creating shapes. Imagine how confusing that must be for them. Imagine how terrifying that must be. And then, as they make their way outside of the cave, they discover an entire world different than anything that they had ever imagined. Now, if that were me, and in a way it was, I would be faced with a choice. Do I go back in and free the people that were with me? Or do I leave them and go out by myself? And that's what brings me here. That's the reason that I do this, and that's the reason why I still participate in those fellowships, and why I reach out to other people and ask them to tell me what their story is, why I ask them, tell me about your life. I want to know all the things about you. I want to know what makes you you. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your experiences? What created you? But I have to ask myself those questions all the time. Now, the answers are not always ones I like. If we go back to the allegory of that cave, we have to imagine that some of those people, once they're set free, are not going to be happy. They're going to be very upset. They're going to be very confused, frightened, angry that their entire existence was set for them by somebody else. That everything that they knew was wrong, in a sense. There might have been a semblance of truth to it, but the shape of a butterfly is not a butterfly. So some of the reactions that you would get from these people, once liberated, wouldn't be what you would expect. We might expect them to be happy, to be thankful, but that's not necessarily going to be the case every time. But does that mean that we shouldn't free them? Does that mean that we don't have a responsibility to ourselves and to them to try to take them out of that cave, or at least give them the option to set themselves free? Shouldn't we help them get out of the binds? What they do afterwards is going to be up to them. But don't we have a responsibility to our own humanity to free them and let them make that choice for the first time in their entire life? I think so. So then, sticking with that theme, as we move forward with the rest of our lives, after we're out of whatever situation bound us, that kept us confined, then what do? There's an entire world outside that we haven't experienced and we're not equipped to deal with. Maybe some people have gone out already. Maybe they know something about the world. Maybe they can help us. Maybe we'll be on our own for a while. It's going to be scary. And I think that's where the old phrase that ignorance is bliss comes from. It's popularized by a lot of philosophical teachings and even modern media. Take, for example, the red pill or the blue pill from the Matrix. Are you happier to be free? Are you happier to have the knowledge that that world outside exists? Or are you upset because what you knew was comforting? There was a sameness, there was stability to the whole thing. And now you're cursed with knowledge of what the outside world has to offer. It's a scary thing. And that's why I think that having a group, having a community, as we called this so far in this project, having an online tribe of like-minded people is so important. Because whatever it is that's holding you back in your life, whatever it is that is letting life pass by the fire and creating a shadow for you to watch, it's not something that's easy to overcome by yourself. And maybe you have. Maybe you are completely aware of what I'm talking about because you've already gone through it. And that's wonderful. I applaud you. It's not an easy thing, and you deserve all the credit for doing that work. But then, isn't it incumbent upon us to try to help the other ones that were left behind? And how can we do that? Well, I think that sharing our experience, strength, and hope of even everyday, boring, mundane activities is an incredibly important part of helping each other out. Because, let's face it, life isn't always exciting things. Life isn't always roller coasters and unicorns and cotton candy and fluffy bunny rabbits. Sometimes life is really hard. We all know that. But more than either of those things, I think personally something that scares me the most is that life can just be boring. It's something that I think that we've all discovered during this pandemic in 2020, that tomorrow isn't always going to be better than today. The difficulty that faces us now in this world is that for the past 100 years, there's just been a surprising and breathtaking amount of advancement in every area. If we were to show a microchip to one of our great-great-grandparents and tell them that you could fit an entire library into this single space and pass on all that knowledge from one person to another, they would consider us to be either insane or possibly witches. And that's just how it goes. They had no means of understanding what was happening because they didn't have the levels of advancement that we do today. And I think one of the problems that haunts so many of us is that we were born into this world that constantly gets better. There's always something new coming. But now we've reached a point where we've been stuck, so many of us, for months, and we don't see an end. We know that there will be one. There will be a vaccine, or the world will change to the point where we can get around all of these things and we'll deal with it. As so many people have said, there will be a new normal, and we'll continue. This isn't going to bring about the end of us. But in the meantime, we've been stuck, having to reevaluate and reassess. What is my story? Where am I going from here? Now that it's all uncertain, and the only thing that is certain is that tomorrow is probably going to be the same as today, what does that mean? What have I done? By the time I got stuck in a lockdown, where was my life going? If I wasn't able to go back into the office and continue my work, did that actually have an impact on anything? If it did have an impact, is it the impact that I wanted? Am I happy to be going back, or am I dreading it because secretly being locked down was somehow liberating for me since I didn't have to go back to an existence I didn't want? And these are the questions that we have to ask ourselves, and these are the problems so many people are dealing with. It's completely understandable, but do we really want to talk about it? Are we really willing to share how we feel with each other? My friend said, Sean, just grow your Instagram. Travel photos are great. People love that. There's a community of people on there. Try to get as many followers as you can. Challenge yourself. See if you can do it. I did. I was surprised because it was a new account, and within a few months I had a few hundred followers, and then it was over 1,000, then it was 1,500, eventually 2,000, 25, 3,000. 3,000 people that clicked on my bio and said, yeah, I'll follow this guy. And it felt good just to have something that I was like, I'm going to start from the bottom and see where it goes. But one of the unexpected benefits of having that advice given to me and taking it was that people started to reach out. People I'd never met before. People I had no idea who they were, where they were from. And they would tell me things like, I really like these photos. Or, where was this at? That looks amazing. And I began to realize more and more how fortunate I was. How fortunate I had been to have somebody loose those bonds and get me out of that cave. gave me the opportunity to go to all kinds of places, experience all kinds of things in this world that I never would have been able to. It gave me a life that was better than anything I had ever imagined. And then I was taking photos of it and sharing it with random people on the internet. But one conversation really stuck out to me. Somebody I'd never met sent me a message. And they asked me, what is it that you do that allows you to go to all these places? And I said, well, I teach English online. And sometimes I participate in teaching fellowships, and I moved to China for a while and lived there as an English teacher, and it's not that difficult to go to Indonesia on vacation when you're already in China. From the US, it's probably impractical because it's literally the other side of the world, but from China, it's a 6-hour flight. And this woman that was talking to me said, I need to make a change. I don't want to be where I'm at in this point in my life anymore. I want to do something like that. I want to change something to get out. And that's what started these thoughts. That's what gave me these ideas of how do I help somebody when they come to me and they say, how did you do this? Can you tell me? And can I encourage them? I had another conversation with a new friend, John Mack, the man that's helping me get all of this stuff started. We were having one of these conversations about where are you from, what do you do, those types of things. And as I was just telling him things about my life, he stopped me and he goes, man, how many lives have you lived? And I went, just the one. And he just kind of smiled at me and he said, no, listen to all the things that you've just told me. You've lived a dozen lives in the period of time that most people live one. And that hit home. That made me feel really good. But also, it made me think about all the things that have accumulated in my life. Experiences, friendships, relationships, romantic partners, travels, photos, memories. And I realized that I want to share those because sharing those impacts people. I want to tell a story to get a reaction. I think the purpose of life is to find a purpose for life. My purpose, as far as I can tell so far, is to make people sit back and go, come on, that didn't really happen. And as we go, you'll probably hear some friends and guests that are on the show and telling these things, and some of it sounds unbelievable. As one of my friends from high school used to ask, would you do it for the story? I said yes. That's how I've tried to live my life so far. And some crazy things have happened. If you haven't had a chance yet, I would direct you over to the website, TheReddestBeard.com. There's a section in there about my written stories. Some of them have been mixed together to create a true story that has little bits of individual stories in it. But that's my prerogative as a storyteller. I'll never lie to you, but I will do my best to entertain you. That may include some embellishment along the way. Hopefully that doesn't detract from anything. And hopefully I'll have enough guests on here that can corroborate everything that I say, so that you'll believe me to be credible when I tell you the outlandish things that happen once you can get out of the cave. I'll try to keep everything short and sweet in these episodes. I'd like you to be able to listen to many of them at once if you're so inclined, but I never want to keep you sitting around waiting for it to end. So for now, that's all. Please, 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 if I've entertained you or piqued your interest, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Get this out there. I want people to be able to understand that it's okay to tell stories just to pass the time and entertain each other, just to build those aspects of humanity. So for now, I'll say goodbye, but I'll see you next week on Tales from the Reddest Beard, the podcast.